She handed me the necklace with shaking hands. Said it was a thank you for everything I'd done. I smiled. Even hugged her. The clasp was cold, and too light. I waited 2 days before taking it to Mr. Samuel's, the old jeweler on Main. He didn't even touch it. Just looked at me, then whispered, "Glass. Very clever glass." She thought I wouldn't notice. That I'd still wear it with pride. My daughter-in-law gave me fake gold. And I gave her a real lawyer. That's fine. The judge can talk now. The house used to hum with quiet. Not loud joy, just small, warm routines. A kettle clicking off. Footsteps in slippers. The creak of the old rocking chair before dawn. That was enough for me. My morning started early. Always have. Boil water. Slice fruit for the grandkids. Fold towels that nobody asked me to fold. I didn't mind. That's what love looks like when you've lived long enough, not loud declarations, just steady presence. After my husband passed, I moved in with my son and his new wife. Just until they got settled. That was 7 years ago. She was sweet in the beginning. Nervous. Polite. Called me Ma, eyes soft, voice careful. We made lentils together once and she asked me if cumin always smelled like memories. I smiled. Back then, I thought we'd build something. I didn't want to be the kind of mother-in-law who hovered or judged. I stayed out of the way. Let them decorate. Let her rearrange the photos in the hallway. Even gave up my seat at the table because she said the light hit her eyes wrong in the morning. Small things. 1,000 small things. When the first baby came, I was the one who stayed up for feedings. Changed sheets. Held her while she cried in the laundry room. I remember thinking, she'll remember this. One day, when I'm old and quiet, she'll remember. She didn't. But that's not where it began. It began on a Tuesday. I was cleaning out the back room, the one that used to be my space. They'd asked if they could turn it into a home office. I said yes. Of course I said yes. I sat on the edge of the bed that was no longer mine and found an old photo, my son at 7, face covered in cake, grinning at a mother who still felt young. I touched the corner. The dust lifted like smoke. Downstairs, I heard laughter. Not cruel. Just distant. The kind that doesn't need you anymore. She used to ask for my advice. Now she asked the neighbor. I used to pick out the kids' clothes. Now she sent back the ones I laid out. Still, I told myself, she's busy. She's young. She doesn't mean anything by it. Some nights, I would heat milk just for me. Sit by the window and count the porch lights across the street. That warm glow. All those families with their own small storms and silences. Sometimes I imagined my husband still sitting beside me. Not saying much. Just breathing. We had a way of sitting in peace without touching. That kind of love stays long after the body goes. Once, I asked her if she'd like to learn how to make his favorite curry. She said she was trying to cut back on heavy spices. I nodded. The next week, she served boxed pasta. I wasn't angry. Not even sad, really. Just smaller. I started writing down grocery lists that no one needed. Keeping coupons for things they wouldn't buy. Rearranging my dresser drawers just to feel useful. I'd hear the kids laugh and pause before opening the door, not wanting to interrupt. I became a guest in my own kindness. When my son got promoted, she threw a party. Invited everyone, her friends, his co-workers, the neighbors. I stood in the kitchen, refilling ice trays. No one asked why I wasn't sitting. A woman looked at me and said, "Oh, I didn't realize you were still living here." Still living. Here. I smiled. Nodded. Said nothing. Later that night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and wiped off my lipstick. It was the same shade I wore at their wedding. Back when she said I looked elegant. Now she said nothing. That's the hardest part of being forgotten. Not the silence, but the volume of everything you used to be. I kept going. Because that's what women like me do. We fold towels that don't belong to us. We warm bottles for children who don't know our names yet. We give our best years to other people's futures. I wasn't expecting applause. Just acknowledgement. A nod. A seat at the table I helped build. Instead, my chair was missing one day. She said it broke. I asked no questions. But I noticed she didn't replace it. I was never truly lonely. Just quietly replaced. And that stays with you. Like a song you can't quite remember, but still hum anyway. Like perfume on someone else's coat. Like a name no longer spoken out loud. I told myself it was fine. Until the day she handed me that necklace. Smiling. Saying thank you. That's when I knew. Peace had never lived here. Just my silence. It was a Sunday. Chicken stew simmered on the stove. The children were chasing each other through the hallway with paper crowns. My son sat on the couch, phone in hand, chuckling at something I couldn't see. She walked in with a small white box. Thin ribbon. Gold-foiled edges. She smiled the kind of smile people give when they want something to look heartfelt, even if it isn't. "This is for you," she said. I wiped my hands on the towel and took it carefully. "Just, thank you. For everything." My son looked up but said nothing. I opened the box. A gold necklace. Delicate. Light. A teardrop stone in the center. Pretty, at first glance. But it felt off. Too light. The clasp was flimsy. Cold, not warm like real metal. Still, I smiled. "Thank you, Beta. It's lovely." She hugged me then. Quick. One arm. Her scent, lavender and something sharp, lingered even after she let go. I went upstairs and placed it on my dresser. Not in the jewelry box. Just beside it. Later that night, I opened the box again. Ran my fingers along the chain. Something wasn't right. It bent too easily. I turned the tag over. Small text, almost rubbed off. Nothing familiar. But tucked underneath the lid, where the cotton padding met the fold, there was a sticker. Torn. Barely visible. Handwritten. Not hers. Just 2 letters, CZ. Cubic zirconia. I froze. Then I breathed. Sat back. Stared at the necklace like it was a stranger. Like it had spoken a language I didn't understand. I didn't say a word. The next morning, I put it in a soft pouch and took the bus to Mr. Samuel's. His store still smelled like wood polish and old stories. He looked up, recognized me instantly. "Ah. Mrs. Bunsell. Haven't seen you in a while." I handed him the pouch without speaking. He opened it, tilted the chain in his hand, then held it to the light. Didn't even reach for his tools. Glass. Very clever glass. He set it down gently, as if it might still bruise. "You want to know what it's worth?" I shook my head. I already knew. I walked home slower than usual. The pouch felt heavy now. Heavier than when it held my hopes. When I got back, she was in the kitchen, laughing on a call, stirring something half-heartedly. She glanced at me, then turned back to the stove. I climbed the stairs. Closed the door. Sat on the bed. The room was silent. But everything inside me was screaming. Why now? Why like this? It wasn't the fake jewelry. It was what it meant. That she thought I wouldn't notice. That I didn't matter enough for real gold. That her thank you was as hollow as the chain around my neck. I opened my old tin box, the one I kept tucked behind the sewing basket. Inside was the receipt for my son's wedding jewelry. 4 gold sets. Paid in full by me. No questions asked. No thanks expected. Just love. And now, this. I picked up the necklace again. Turned it over. Felt the coolness between my fingers. I remembered something else then. The tag. That handwriting. Not hers. It was my son's. Small, crooked letters. Just like he wrote on birthday cards as a child. My throat tightened. He knew. He knew it wasn't real. And he gave it anyway. Not a mistake. Not forgetfulness. A choice. That's what broke me. Not the weight. But the absence. The kind that comes from people who once looked at you like you were the whole sky, and now, barely the weather. I didn't cry. I just sat there, holding the truth in my hands like it might dissolve if I blinked too hard. The necklace gleamed in the light. Shiny. Pretty. But fake. Just like their gratitude. Their smiles. Their thank yous. That night, I left it on my dresser again. Not to wear. Not to admire. To remember. The exact moment everything shifted. The moment I stopped hoping for love from people who had already replaced me. The moment I knew the silence wasn't peace. It was exile. And I had allowed it. Until now. The morning after, I made parathas. 3 plates. Buttered edges. A little bowl of mango pickle on the side, just the way he used to like them when he was little. No one came to the table. I waited. Poured chai into 3 cups. Steam curling like an invitation. 5 minutes. 10. She finally walked in, earbuds in. Looked at the spread and frowned. Oh. I thought we were doing smoothies this week. She picked up a banana and walked out. No thanks. No smile. Not even a glance at the food. My son followed a few minutes later, in a rush. Kissed the top of my head out of habit. You made breakfast? Sorry, Ma. Gotta run. Big meeting. Took his coffee. Left the plate untouched. I sat down and ate alone. The parathas were soft. Warm. And suddenly tasteless. But it was just one morning. One small hurt. Easy to excuse. Another time, I found one of my old shawls in the laundry basket, balled up and damp. I asked the house help if she'd seen it. Oh, she said, Madam used it to line the dog's crate when his blanket was wet. The dog. The crate. My silk shawl. I said nothing. Folded it anyway. Still smelled like damp wool and lavender detergent. She started calling me by my name when other people were around. Not Ma. Not Amma. Reka, could you grab that towel? Reka, the kid spilled juice again. At first, I thought she was just tired. Distracted. Then I realized, she only did it when her friends were visiting. Or when the camera was on during her work calls. I became a prop. A housekeeper in her curated world. Reka sounds polite. Distant. Forgettable. Not like Ma. Not like someone who held her baby before she did, because she was too weak from the surgery. Not like someone who bathed that child in warm rose water when the power went out for 3 days. But I said nothing. Because what would I say? It hurts when you stop calling me family? She would have laughed. Or worse, nodded, like she understood. And still changed nothing. There was a day I came home from the clinic, my knees had been giving me trouble, and I found my photo missing from the living room wall. The big family photo. Our first Diwali together. I wore a maroon sari. She had her hand on my shoulder. The baby slept between us. In its place was a modern print. Abstract. Pale colors. No faces. I asked if the frame broke. "Oh," she said, barely looking up from her phone, "I'm redoing the aesthetic. We're going minimalist." Minimalist. Which apparently meant, removing me. I nodded. Went to my room. Closed the door slowly. No sound. Just the soft click of being unwanted. A memory came back to me that night. She was 22. Newly married. Overwhelmed. She stood in the kitchen, chopping onions wrong, and I placed my hands over hers. Guided her fingers. She turned to me, eyes glassy from the onions and emotion, and whispered, "I don't know how to be a wife. But I'll try to be a good daughter." She meant it then. And somewhere along the line, forgot. Or maybe, unmeant it. On my birthday, I waited all morning. No one said anything. Not my son. Not the kids. Not her. At noon, I checked the kitchen, thinking maybe there was a cake in the fridge. Maybe a small card tucked away. There was nothing. I picked up the landline. Called my cousin in Delhi. Spoke about the weather for 20 minutes, just so my voice wouldn't go unused. By evening, the neighbor stopped by with leftover gulab jamun. I told her it wasn't a special day. Just another Wednesday. She smiled. Sat with me anyway. That night, I found a small envelope slipped under my door. My name. No handwriting. Inside was a card, unsigned. Printed words, "To someone who means the world." Cheap. From a drugstore. I flipped it over. Price tag still on. $2. Marked down from $5. The next day, she posted a photo on social media. Her and the kids. Caption, "My whole world in one frame." I wasn't in it. Not even tagged. I once gave her my mother's anklets. Silver. Worn smooth with time. She had admired them at the wedding, said they sounded like history. I found them 6 months later, shoved in the back of a kitchen drawer. Next to expired batteries and a broken spatula. When I held them in my palm, they were bent. One bell missing. Silent. Like me. These weren't loud betrayals. No slaps. No insults. Just omissions. Adjustments. Tiny, daily ways of saying, "You are not needed here." And I made excuses. She's tired. She's overwhelmed. She's still learning how to be a mother, a wife, a woman. But somewhere in that maze of justifications, I lost sight of myself. What I gave. What I built. What I was worth. Dinner plates grew smaller. Conversations shorter. Rooms colder. Even the grandkids stopped running into my arms first. They started calling her mommy in songs. And me, just Dottie. Softly. Like an afterthought. There is a kind of pain that doesn't shout. It just settles. Slowly. In your joints. Your silence. Your memory. I carried that pain like tradition. Because that's what women like me were taught to do. Smile. Serve. Stay. But I was starting to forget why. Or who I was doing it for. And that forgetting, that's what scared me most. Not what they did. But how easy it became to expect nothing. To excuse everything. It happened on an ordinary day. No lightning. No fight. No final straw slammed down in anger. Just silence. The kind that presses into your ribs. The kind that waits. I was dusting the cupboard in the spare room, the one where they kept odds and ends now. Old school projects, winter blankets, boxes labeled "Misk" in her handwriting. A drawer stuck halfway. I tugged gently, and it slid open with a sigh. Inside, a tangle of cords, crumpled receipts, and the necklace. The fake one. Still in its box. Lid ajar. Not hung. Not worn. Not remembered. She hadn't even bothered to pretend she kept it. It sat there like trash. A lie I was meant to treasure. I stared at it for a long time. Long enough for the light to shift across the floor. Long enough to forget I was still holding the duster. Then, I picked it up. Turned it over. Held it like something sacred that had gone rotten. It wasn't the glass. It wasn't the forgery. It was that it meant nothing to her. Not even guilt. I walked back to my room and opened the bottom drawer of my almirah. Pulled out the velvet pouch I hadn't touched in years. Inside, a real gold chain. The one my husband gave me after our son was born. "I know it's small," he said, "but it's the start of your new life. You're a mother now." Back then, it felt like sunlight in my hand. Warm. Real. Heavy with meaning. I held that chain now in one hand, and the fake one in the other. My past in gold. My present in glass. I sat on the bed. The fan creaked above me, slow and steady. And I remembered. A younger me, hair still black, sari pressed, rocking my son in her lap, whispering lullabies. He had tiny fingers and a strong grip. He used to hold on to the chain when he fed. Like he knew what was real. That memory hit me like a wave I didn't see coming. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. Not because of anger. Not even sadness. But a kind of disappearance. I looked around the room. Nothing of mine was left here. Not the photo with my husband. That had been moved to a drawer when the kids asked who he was and she said, "Oh, that's old family." Not my books. She donated them during her declutter phase. Not even my own wedding sari. It was in a vacuum bag under the bed, labeled fabric. I sat very still. Tried to hold myself together. Tried to remember the last time someone looked at me and saw more than function. I couldn't. I don't know how long I sat like that. But I remember this. My feet touching the floor. My fingers curled tight around both chains. My breath, shallow and controlled. I walked to the mirror. Looked at myself. Lines deeper than I remembered. Eyes dull. Hair streaked with a wisdom no one valued anymore. I used to laugh in this mirror. Now, I just looked. And saw. Empty. Forgotten. Perfect. I laid both chains on the dresser. The real one. The fake one. Side by side. One, a memory. The other, a message. I didn't cry. Tears would have been too easy. Too loud. Instead, I smoothed the dresser cloth. Straightened the box. Picked up the old velvet pouch and tucked it back away. But I left the fake necklace out. On purpose. Right in the middle. Let her see it. Let her remember. Or not. Either way, I was done carrying the weight of being gracious. Done making myself smaller just so no one else had to feel uncomfortable. That night, I reheated my dinner twice. No one came to eat with me. I sat by the window, the plate balanced on my lap. Outside, the streetlight flickered. Inside, my mind raced. Have you ever remembered something small? Just when everything else was falling apart. That's what happened when I took my first bite. A flash. My son, age 12, rushing into the kitchen, holding a school certificate. "Ma! Look, I won." I hugged him so tight, the paper crumpled. He didn't care. He said, "You always make things matter more, Ma. Even the small stuff." That was the last time he said that. Now, the small stuff was where they hid me. In the drawer. In the corners. In silence. And I let them. Until now. I washed my plate. Dried it. Put it away. Turned off the lights. Sat in the dark. Let the night press in. But it didn't feel cold anymore. It felt honest. The next morning, I got up early. Fed the dog. Watered the plants. But I didn't cook. I didn't clean. I didn't make myself useful. I made myself quiet. Present. Watching. Waiting. And in that silence, something shifted. Not in them. In me. I woke up before the alarm. Didn't need it. I hadn't been sleeping much anyway. The sky was still gray. Soft. Unbothered. I sat at the edge of the bed, pulled the blanket over my knees, and looked at the dresser. The fake necklace was gone. No note. No questions. Just vanished. I smiled. Not because it was gone. Because she thought I'd be hurt. But I wasn't. Not anymore. I was finished playing the part of the silent servant in my own home. It was time to leave. Not loudly. Not angrily. Just, finally. That morning, I made tea. 1 cup. For myself. Then I opened the small metal locker I hadn't touched in years. Inside, my pension papers, a few saving certificates, a notarized copy of the house deed. I pulled out the envelope and ran my fingers over the name that used to mean something. Rekha Devi, joint holder. I placed it into my handbag. Added my ID. A pen. And the velvet pouch with the real gold chain. Not for revenge. For remembrance. I tied my dupatta over my shoulder, checked the mirror once, and left the room without a sound. I took a rickshaw to the lawyer's office. Mr. Rao. He had been kind to my husband once, years ago. Said if I ever needed anything, his door was open. The receptionist asked if I had an appointment. I didn't answer. I just took out the old deed and placed it on the counter. 2 minutes later, he called me in. By the time I left, the house was no longer in both our names. The joint status was dissolved. My share frozen. My rights reinstated, clearly, legally, irrevocably. It was the quietest transaction of my life. No shouting. No accusations. Just paperwork. Signatures. Stamps. A gentle slam of a legal door they never expected me to find. On the way home, I stopped by the post office. Set up a personal mailbox. Paid the annual fee. Gave them my name. Just mine. No care of. No extensions of identity. No borrowed titles. Rekha Devi. Full. Simple. Enough. Back home, the house was quiet. She was in the sunroom, scrolling on her phone. My son was on a call, pacing. I walked into the kitchen. Opened the drawer. Took out my set of keys. Held them for a second. Then placed them, one by one, on the counter. House key. Cabinet key. Gate lock. No clatter. Just a soft landing. Like pebbles dropped in a shallow river. She looked up. Everything okay? I nodded. Smiled. Just cleaning out some things. Then I walked past her. Didn't explain. Didn't stop. I went upstairs and opened the closet. Took out the last sari I hadn't worn in years, green silk, for my 25th anniversary. Folded it slowly. Picked up the only 2 books that hadn't been donated. A scarf my mother gave me. My reading glasses. And a single framed photo, my son at 5, holding my hand, both of us covered in Rangoli powder. Everything else? I left behind. They'd already made it clear, it didn't belong to me anymore. Then came the silent scene. I sat at my desk. Opened my phone. Went to the family group chat. 3 unread messages. A photo of the kids. A forwarded quote. A shopping list. I held my breath. Then tapped leave group. No pop-up. No warning. Just gone. I turned the phone off. Placed it face down. Sat in the silence I had once mistaken for peace. And felt, for the first time in years, power. Later that evening, I passed her in the hallway. She was holding a bag of toys. Have you seen the kids' math books? I smiled. No. But they'll find them. She blinked. Paused. I didn't. I watered the plants. Didn't touch her herbs, the ones she planted last spring and forgot to tend. I let them wilt. Let them become what neglect always becomes. Visible. That night, I changed the name on the mailbox. Covered the old tape with a clean label. Rekha Devi. No Mrs. No initials. Just me. I stood there a moment longer than necessary. Felt the breeze on my face. The scent of wet leaves. The low hum of the street lamp. No music. No applause. Just the quiet dignity of a woman finally stepping back into her own life. I didn't slam the door. I just closed it, finally. Viewer reflection prompt. Have you ever stayed quiet just to keep the peace? And did it feel like peace? Or just disappearance? It came 2 weeks later. I was at the lawyer's again, finalizing some documents. Mr. Rao had offered to update my will, just to protect yourself, he said, kindly, like someone speaking to a woman who'd been asleep for too long. I agreed. We sat quietly, signing pages. He slid over a form to verify beneficiaries, just a formality. That's when he paused. Brows drawn together. He pulled out another document from my old file, one I didn't recognize. Same header. Same name. But not my handwriting. I wasn't aware you'd already filed a power of attorney, he said carefully. I looked at him. I didn't. He turned the page toward me. There it was. My name. My son's signature. And mine, forged. Sloppy. Like someone mimicking strokes they'd only seen once or twice. I stared at it. Dated 6 months ago. I didn't speak. Just stared. A sound started humming in my ears, low and sharp. He reached out, gently touched my wrist. This document gave your son full control of your medical and financial decisions. If it had been processed, he could have sold property, or admitted you anywhere without your consent. Anywhere. Assisted living. Hospital. Nursing home. Gone. Just like that. All without a single word to me. I walked out with the paper still in my hand. Didn't wait for a ride. Didn't call anyone. I needed to walk. Feet moving slower than the thoughts in my chest. Not even anger. Not yet. Just the slow weight of betrayal settling into my bones. They didn't just forget me. They erased me. When I got home, I went straight to the cupboard in the hallway, the one where she kept important documents. I'd never looked through it before. But now. I opened drawer after drawer. Receipts. Bank papers. School forms. And then I saw it. A red folder. The kind you only buy for things you don't want touched. Inside were scans of the same forged document. Emails between her and a notary. Even a draft with my name misspelled, Reka. Like I was just a form to fill out. A task to complete. Next to it, a small tag. I froze. It was the same shape, same handwriting as the sticker tucked inside the necklace box. Gift, CZ, 3.5G, no cert. Not written by her. Written by my son. The son who once cried when he broke my bangles as a child. The son who made me promise never to grow old without him. Now forging my name and tagging glass like gold. I sat on the floor. Let the folder fall beside me. And remembered the moment I gave her my mother's bangles, the ones I had worn on my wedding day. She looked at me and said, "I'll keep them safe, Ma. Always." I believed her. Now I didn't even know where they were. The house was quiet when I stood up again. I walked past her in the kitchen. She was laughing into her phone. The kids were in the living room, faces lit by screens. My son's shoes sat by the door. Polished. Organized. Clean. Mine were gone. Moved to the back closet. Even my space by the door had been taken. I opened the safe in my room and placed the red folder inside. Closed it gently. No slamming. No fury. Just facts. The truth, sealed. And next to it, I laid down the fake necklace. Let it sit in that steel belly beside the forged betrayal. Because that's where it belonged, with other stolen things. That night, I made myself a cup of warm turmeric milk. Not for health. For memory. My husband used to make it for me on cold nights. He once said, "People lie with words. But actions? Those don't stutter." And now, I saw their actions clearly. Not just forgetting. Not just sidelining. This was removal. They were preparing for a future without me, while still living under my roof. Still smiling. Still saying, "Good morning." Still handing me glass and calling it gold. I stepped out onto the balcony, wrapped myself in my shawl, and looked out over the street. All those windows glowing in the distance. How many women were inside them, I wondered, sitting in the corners of their own homes, disappearing piece by piece. How many were being softened into silence? How many still believed that being needed meant being loved? I had been both. Needed. Used. But not loved. Not anymore. Inside, she was telling the children a story. One I used to tell. Word for word. Even her voice tried to sound like mine. But it wasn't. It never could be. Because I didn't tell stories just to fill silence. I told them to pass down history. Now she used my stories to replace me. As if I were just a temporary narrator. I closed the window. Turned the lock. Sat down at my desk and wrote a new list. Not groceries. Not chores. Names. 2 charities. 1 trust. 1 lawyer. I wasn't going to be erased. Not by fake signatures. Not by borrowed smiles. Not by a son who forgot the weight of my sacrifices the moment he tasted comfort. I tucked the real gold chain into my drawer. Not because I needed it. But because it reminded me who I had been, when love was still real. When love wore weight. I woke up at dawn the next day. Not to cook. Not to fold. Not to wait. But to choose. There's something sacred about the morning when you finally realize, you don't owe anyone your silence. I sat with my tea, facing the east window. The sky was soft and uncommitted, not quite gold, not yet blue. It looked the way I felt, in between. But moving forward. I took the velvet pouch from my drawer, the one with the real gold chain. Ran it through my fingers. Let the weight remind me who I was, and what I'd survived. Then I slipped it into a small cloth bag and placed it into an envelope addressed to a local nonprofit, one that supports single older women starting over. For someone whose name has been forgotten, I wrote. But whose worth is still intact. That chain had served its purpose. It reminded me I once gave real love. Now it would remind someone else that real things still exist. I sealed the envelope. Didn't hesitate. Later that morning, I opened the back gate and stepped into the overgrown garden. It used to be mine. Once filled with tulsi, hibiscus, and marigolds my husband adored. He used to hum while watering them, always off-key. After he passed, she let it go wild. Said it was too much work. Said it attracted ants. I used to nod. Let it die quietly. But not today. I pulled out the dead roots with my bare hands. Dug into the earth until my nails cracked and my knees ached. Replanted marigold seeds. It wasn't just a garden. It was a reclamation. A slow, rooted no. No, I will not disappear politely. No, I will not be the ghost in your comfort. No, I will not shrink from soil I once made bloom. After washing up, I opened the hallway closet. Pulled out the large storage bin marked fabric. Inside was my wedding sari. Still folded, still perfect. Silk red. Embroidered with gold elephants and tiny bells that no longer chimed. She said we didn't have space for it in the main closet. Said it was too ornate. I unfolded it. Held it to my chest. Then walked across the street. To Leela. My neighbor. Widowed. Quiet. Raised 3 daughters on a single salary. I asked her if she knew someone getting married who couldn't afford a sari. Her eyes widened. So many, she whispered. I handed it to her. Didn't say anything poetic. Just pressed it into her hands. Make sure it's worn with love, I said. She nodded. Tears in her throat. I walked away lighter. I made 3 more stops that week. Gave away the anklets my mother passed down to a temple fundraiser, they'd melted into a new bell. Donated my husband's old coat to the guard at the clinic. He didn't say much, just placed it over his lap like it meant something. And on Thursday, I visited a notary and revised my will. My son's name was removed. The inheritance, my half of the house, what remained of my savings, was redirected. To the school I once cleaned as a volunteer. To the girl next door who reads books on the stairs because her mother says the living room is too noisy. To the nurse who stayed late with me that one winter when my knees swelled and no one came to pick me up. People who remembered me without needing something. People who saw me, even when I wasn't trying to be seen. I sat on the edge of my bed that night and thought about the old label from the necklace box, the one with CZ in tiny handwriting. I had almost burned it. Instead, I folded it into a paper flower and buried it under the marigold bed. Not out of sentiment. Out of finality. Let it return to dirt. Let the false things feed something real. The next morning, she noticed the garden. Poked her head out, confused. I thought we weren't doing anything out there anymore. I looked up from the soil. I am. She blinked. Oh, okay. Just, let me know if you need help. I smiled. The kind of smile you give when someone's already lost the right to matter. No need. I have it covered. That evening, I sat on the porch with the tea I brewed for myself. No one joined me. No one asked if I was okay. And for once, I didn't hope they would. Peace isn't something you wait for. It's something you claim. And when you do, really do, you stop asking for it to be approved. Later, I walked to the mailbox I'd opened in my name. Inside was a reply from the nonprofit. Your gift arrived. She cried when she opened it. Said it was the first time she'd worn something beautiful in 20 years. I folded the letter. Placed it on my nightstand. Watched the ceiling fan circle above like a quiet guardian. And for the first time in a long while, I slept. No fear. No noise. No weight. Just strength. Would you have walked away, or taken everything back? And if you walked, did it feel like leaving? Or coming home? It started with a knock. Soft. Hesitant. Not the kind you answer unless you're expecting an apology. I let it ring once more before I opened the door. My son stood there. Hair messy. Shirt untucked. Face drawn like he hadn't slept right in weeks. He didn't say hello. Just, can we talk? I stepped aside. Not because I was ready. Because I was finished being afraid of his discomfort. He walked in like a stranger. Like he was visiting someone else's home. The children weren't with him. Neither was she. He sat on the edge of the couch. Same couch I had once scrubbed stains from after his daughter spilled juice during movie night. Same couch they later told me was too cluttered with my cushions. I saw the notice, he said, voice low. The new will. The revoked deed. The trust fund setup. He didn't look angry. Just small. Like someone who had bet too confidently and lost more than he could admit. You didn't even tell me. I looked at him for a long time. Then said, you didn't ask. He flinched. A real, visible flinch. I thought we were just sorting things for the future, he muttered. The power of attorney, it was her idea. We just wanted to be prepared. For what? I asked, soft and steady. My disappearance? He opened his mouth. Then closed it. Shame sat between us like a third person. I didn't mean to. I raised my hand. Not to stop him. To silence the lie. You knew the necklace was fake, I said. No accusation. Just the plainness of truth. He didn't deny it. Didn't look me in the eye. It was all we could afford, he said, quietly. She said it was more about the gesture. I laughed once. Soft. Dry. No, Beta. It was about what you thought I'd accept. He looked up then. His eyes were red. I'm sorry, Ma. A whisper. As if saying it louder might wake something worse. I was just trying to keep peace. Peace. The word hit me like cold rain. That's the word they always use when they mean silence. When they mean, don't speak. Don't change. Don't make this harder. He reached for my hand. I let him touch it. But I didn't hold back. I gave you a home. I gave you my time. I gave her the gold from my wedding day so she wouldn't feel small when she married into this house. I paused. My name was removed before I had a chance to say no. He closed his eyes. Shoulders sagged. I miss you, Ma, he whispered. Things don't feel right anymore. And for a moment, just one, I felt a tug. Not forgiveness. Just memory. A boy in a school uniform, holding my hand too tight on his first day. A teenager burning toast and crying because he forgot I hadn't eaten. That boy was still in there somewhere. But the man who sat before me had let someone else decide who I was. And worse, he agreed. That night, I heard from her. A voicemail. Not her voice, just background sobs and then, finally. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't think you'd leave us like this. Then quieter. We're still family. I deleted it. No anger. Just finality. 2 days later, she came by. I didn't open the door. Watched from the kitchen window as she stood there, hair tied back, wearing the shawl I'd once given her for her first Mother's Day. She waited. Shifted from foot to foot. Looked back at the car like she might cry or scream or both. I didn't move. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I'd finally tasted peace. And I wasn't trading it back for performance. She slipped a card through the door crack. Inside. We were wrong. Please come back home. Home. As if I'd ever truly left it. As if I hadn't been exiled long before I packed a single thing. I tossed the card into the fire pit. Ash curled like old love. The next week, my son tried again. Asked if we could talk over dinner. I said no. He asked if I hated him. I said, no. I just don't need you to love me like a secret anymore. He stood there. Tears visible now. I didn't move to hug him. Didn't offer tea. Didn't say it was okay. Because it wasn't. It would never be. But that didn't mean I had to stay stuck inside it. He left slower this time. Turned back once, expecting a softened glance. I gave him a steady one. Not cold. Not cruel. Just, done. As he reached the gate, I whispered to myself. For a moment, I pitied them. Then I remembered who I was. Not a backup. Not a placeholder. A woman. A mother. A full story, not a footnote in theirs. That night, I opened the window. Breathed in the scent of my marigolds finally blooming again. I wasn't waiting for them anymore. I wasn't holding space for apologies that arrived dressed in delay. I was choosing stillness. And that was enough. Do you believe quiet dignity is stronger than revenge? And if so, what would you give up to keep it? The mornings are different now. Not quieter, the house was always quiet. But this silence isn't heavy. It's mine. I don't wake up to doors slamming or utensils clattering or whispered resentment behind polished smiles. I wake up to birdsong. To the low rustle of wind through marigolds that bloomed without permission. They never asked for space. They just took root where they could. And waited for light. Like me. I sit in the garden most days now. The same garden they once called too much work. Now thriving with color. Tulsi leaves curling under sunlight. Hibiscus reaching skyward. Marigolds, bold, unapologetic, lining the path like tiny suns. I keep my tea on a tray beside me. 1 cup. No extra. No more waiting for someone to join me out of guilt or obligation. I don't chase company anymore. I welcome peace. There's an old plastic chair under the neem tree. The one they moved into storage when minimalism became her new design language. I brought it back. Washed it. Wiped it down with turmeric water and a drop of oil. Set it beneath the tree where my husband once read the newspaper every Sunday. It creaks when I sit in it. And I love that sound. It means it's still here. Still useful. Still mine. Last week, I planted lemongrass. The roots took instantly. No hesitation. No debate. No need to explain their worth. I watched them drink in the rain and thought. This is what belonging looks like when it's real. I found the key yesterday. The extra one. The one they thought I'd forgotten about, to the little storage locker at the railway station where I kept a box of old things when they started reorganizing the house. They said it was just clutter. Just memories. Inside. A black and white photo of me and my husband, cheek to cheek, smiling like we hadn't yet been tired by life. My first teaching certificate. The baby bracelet from the hospital when my son was born. A handwritten recipe for mango pickle, in my mother's voice. I sat on the bench outside the locker and wept. Not out of grief. Out of presence. Because I realized I hadn't lost anything. I had just been buried. Under their convenience. Their comfort. Their version of who I was supposed to be. Now, I was excavating. Not with shouts. With grace. With care. With my own hands. I went back home and took that key, the one no one knew I had, and walked to the riverbank. Held it in my palm for a long time. So many years I begged to be seen. To be invited. To be thanked. To be remembered. I closed my fingers around it and whispered. I am not a guest in my own story. Then I opened my hand. And let the key fall. The river took it. No splash. Just surrender. It was never the key they stole from me. It was the one I never gave. And that became the one that freed me. They still call sometimes. She texts occasionally. Recipes. Photos of the children. Passive questions like, hope you're doing well. I don't reply. Not out of cruelty. Out of clarity. Some bridges don't need to burn. They need to be quiet. Uncrossed. Respected from a distance. I still keep the red folder in the safe. Next to it, a photo of me in that green silk sari. Alone. Laughing. A little blurry, like someone captured a moment they weren't supposed to see. I like it that way. Not posed. Not approved. Just, true. Every evening, I light a small dia in the garden. Not for tradition. Not for anyone watching. Just for me. To honor the woman who stayed too long. And the woman who finally stood up. Peace was never handed to me. No one offered it wrapped in ribbon or dressed in sincerity. I carved it. Slowly. With quiet hands. And the sharp blade of reality. I gave up being needed. And gained something holier. Being enough. The sun sets differently now. Not behind walls I helped build for others. But across a sky wide enough to hold only what I choose to keep. And as the wind brushes my cheek, I hear no voices calling me back. Only this. I was never the echo. I was the voice they tried to silence. The key I never gave, became the one that freed me.